All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Zimmerman. I am the ER coordinator for the Federal Highway Division. And Brian Pribble and I, who is the Iowa DOT coordinator, put on 4 different sets of training this early spring or late winter. And this is kind of the same thing. Some things were modified a little bit for the spring training, but ultimately we're just going to talk to you about kind of how to get the most out of the ER program, kind of know the limitations and the repair tactics and kind of the general process that was developed from the 2019 flooding event. And a lot of this presentation is based around the ER guide for Iowa, a simple 7-page document that I put together to hopefully help clarify certain repair tactics, some communication chains, who to notify, when to notify, talk about some reimbursement stuff. And so I recommend going to the local systems website to access this guide. It might even be a good guide to follow along with during my presentation. When to use the ER program? How do you initiate the ER program to get those additional federal funds? Well, first you must have at least $1 million of damage from federal aid routes statewide. That will kick off the disaster proclamation by the governor, and in the proclamation they will cover certain counties of the disaster. So make sure your county is listed if you would like additional emergency relief funds. You've also experienced damage within the right-of-way of a federal major collector route or higher. If not, then the ER program doesn't even concern you. So bullet point 3 is kind of not needed, but at the same time, just to reinforce the obvious. And of course, your repairs must be greater than $5,000 worth of damage. So now that you got the ER program in place and you want to do a project, well, you're using federal funds, so federal regulations do apply. Everything is just like normal. The only waiver, you could call it, to the federal regulations is the procurement method, such as emergency relief. You can use forced account or negotiated contracts. That's not typically allowed during normal federal projects, but the ER program does allow it. So this slide, we're just going to kind of go over some of the obvious, the eligible repairs, kind of showing you the scope of the ER program. So most of you know and have experienced a lot of these bullet points, but there's some unique ones. Maybe you didn't know that preliminary engineering or construction engineering was eligible. Any damage caused by vehicles repairing federal aid routes is eligible. And there's also a bullet point not on here, but damage caused by So any damage caused by vehicles repairing federal aid routes, that applies to minor collectors and below. So if you have a road like that was damaged from construction work repairing federal aid routes, we feel obligated to also fix that. There's also situations of FEMA or other emergency response vehicles damaging a federal aid route that is also eligible. Now we've got some kind of the ineligible repairs. So there's kind of the rare scenario, but if you have a bridge that is planned to be replaced and it's already on the STIP, that is not eligible if it's damaged during an ER event. Frost heaving is not eligible. Any work done before the event date. So there's no prep work. The ER program is not a proactive program. It's a reactive program. And that's just kind of how it was designed. So it only comes into play if something has been damaged. There is damage to stockpile materials on construction sites. That is not eligible. The materials must be incorporated into the project for it to be eligible. Gradual deterioration of a roadway element over time. This is kind of a unique one because there were certain scenarios this last event where a site had been damaged in the past and it just got worse over time, and then the 2019 event made it even worse. These are not eligible. Only damage caused by the current event. So in general, the black and white of the emergency program. You get your emergency repairs. Repairs that are urgent, you must do them right away to protect the facility, restore traffic. They're 100% eligible. You don't need prior approval. And then you got the flip side. You got the permanent repairs. These must be authorized and let through the DOT like any other standard federal aid project. The only thing different is you're using ER funds instead of another federal funding source. And they're always paid at the 80%, the normal pro rata share. So this table is for the non-NHS routes. And again, this is in your ER guide. And this is kind of the bread and butter of it. This is where hopefully most of the decisions and understanding of what you plan to do can be quickly translated. So for example, all the items above the black line, the solid black line, you can do without notifying Federal Highway. You don't need a DDIR, just go in and do it. Everything below the black line, Federal Highway must be notified before the work starts. So for example, maybe you've got a roadway that was destroyed and there was a guardrail on it. You can repair the roadway. However, you would need to contact me before you install the guardrail. Basically just explaining why you want to install the guardrail at the same time. And as you can see, there's the yellow, that's all 100% funded. And then there's the green, that's all 80% funded. So just to kind of help clarify that table, I'm just going to kind of go through some examples of, well, what happened in 2019 and how it all played out. So it's pretty straightforward. You got damaged shoulder, throw some riprap to protect the facility, 100% eligible. You got a roadway that was destroyed, coming in to fix the base and sub-base, put some gravel on there. You got gravel, you've restored your essential traffic, all that work, 100% eligible. Here you had water over the roadway. Well, they threw in some TBR on the side, filled it with gravel so that they could get traffic running over top of it. Temporary fix, restore essential traffic, 100% eligible. Here, this is the after photo of the repair, but they lost the shoulder. You lose the shoulder right next to a travel lane. Could be very dangerous with that drop off. So get in there, throw the gravel back. Maybe it even protects the facility from raveling away at the edge of travel lane. And you're restoring essential traffic, 100% eligible. Here, you got the water going up and down. Well, the water comes back up again. And you realize if we don't throw in a temporary dike or a dam like this, our intersection is going to get flooded. So throw your dike up there. You'll save your intersection from being flooded, so you're restoring essential traffic, 100% eligible. Now you've got a bridge abutment that washed away a lot of dirt. Now you got the piles exposed. Get in there and fix it. Whatever you need to do. Dirt, flowable mortar, riprap, all that, 100% funded. So now let's move to the permanent repairs. Things that must be let through the DOT and authorized by Federal Highway before any work can start. So with this, you got a backslope repair or backslope slide. Now, the reason it's permanent is because it's not affecting the travelway. It's not restoring essential traffic. It's not protecting the facility. So it's a permanent repair. You got the right-of-way fence. Again, it's not affecting traffic or the facility. So it's a permanent repair. Here you got a damaged culvert. Now, it might seem like it could be emergency, but really it's not. It did not damage the roadway, so essential traffic was always maintained, and it also did not threaten the roadway from future damage, so it's a permanent repair. So that's kind of the black and white, but most of this we live in the gray area. Kind of going back to that table, what can be done during emergency repairs, what can't, how do we notify? And so, again, if you follow that ER guide, hopefully everything is explained well and identified for what you need to do prior to doing work. And we'll go through some slides to kind of give you an example. Here you got a wooden box culvert that collapsed and therefore damaged the roadway above it as everything kind of sank a little bit. So all this work can be done without Federal Highway knowing because it's a culvert and it's a patching item. Now, the culvert and the patching item are paid at 80%, but Federal Highway does not need to be notified. Again, if you're following along in your guide and you're looking at that colored table and you're looking at the above and below lines and the green and the yellow, it all makes sense, hopefully. Again, here you got a patching item. Patching can be done without Federal Highway concurrence, but it's paid at 80%. Here's a slightly different scenario. You had some scour on a pier, so they went in there and they tried to fix the scour, throw some dirt and riprap. However, the damage was too great, and so they need to actually go in there and reinforce the entire structure. So all the riprap stuff to protect the pier does not need Federal Highway concurrence, and it's paid at 100%. But as soon as they started getting structural items in there, they needed to notify Federal Highway. We concurred with the work, then they could start the work. And therefore, they're not slowing down. They don't have to let a project just to do this work. So that's kind of it. There's many other examples. And if you have any questions, hypotheticals, please give me a call. Let me know. I can talk it through, and so you can get a better understanding. So now let's switch gears a little bit. This is the emergency work extension. Like last event, there could be a lot of places that are flooded for months on end. And it's unfair to have a roadway or a site that's been flooded for 5 months and it finally becomes accessible. You only get a month to do emergency 100% funded work when it basically isn't fair. Extension requests are allowed, and there's really only 2 stipulations. Make sure the requests are done before the 180 days are up, and use photos or whatever other methods to show how your site was inaccessible. Once we look at that, we can determine, based on your estimated completion date of repair, what type of extension requests we can give you. So we'll give you an extension of everything, an extension of doing 100% funded work, extension of using emergency procurement methods, but just make sure you get that extension request in before the 180 days are up. There could be unique scenarios where your site has been flooded and it's still flooded and inaccessible on day 179. Still, send us a photo to show how it's inaccessible. And basically all we're going to do is say, okay, we've documented, they've got the request in. When the site does become accessible, we can talk again and we'll figure out what your estimated completion date is, and then we'll kind of figure out that official extension and all that. That is pretty much it. I know this time I'd probably take a lot of questions on reimbursement, since during the training we had a lot of questions about, well, once a DIR is approved and once I've done the work, how do I get reimbursement? And that's kind of not on the federal highway side anymore. That's up to your local system. So talk to, if you're on the west side, talk to Vince Eller. If you're in the central side, talk to Brian Cadis. And the east side, Ken Ellis. So basically, once a DIR is approved by me, it becomes a state-administered project. So that's about all I have. Again, stress that ER guide, the local systems link. It explains a lot. It defines what's essential traffic. It gives some scenarios. It gives a lot of contact information. It also talks about the difference between FEMA and federal highway, which is always a big important one, because I know FEMA can come in there and cross paths with the ER program, and it can be very frustrating. That's all I have. Give me a call if you have any questions about this presentation. I'm glad and free to talk about it and help clarify anything I can. Thank you very much.